lot, so we are Lamed out on base, I think. No, that's not correct. Lamed Gimel on base. Halacha Vav. Habal Aim. Somebody has relations with his mother. Okay, incestuous relations with mother. Of course, this Gemara is in the middle of those people who get stoned for their transgressions. So Habal Aim said his relation with his mother, Chayvel, and Mishum Aim is liable upon her because of mother, Mishum Aim Sav, and because of father's wife. Okay? In other words, he gets two deaths, and the Gemara is going to ask, you're going to give him two death penalties. If you don't marry Enoch Chayvel Mishum Aim, Bilbadi only gets killed because of the mother. If you have relations with your father's wife, Chayvel Mishum Aim Sav, you're liable because of father's wife, or Mishum Aim Ish, and because of the she's the wife of a man. She's a married woman. That which you're liable on the issues of is both during your father's lifetime and after your father's death. Whether your father only betrothed her, or of course, even if he married, of course, if he did marry her, Abba Kalos of some relations with his daughter-in-law, Chayav Aleh Mishum Kalos is liable because of daughter-in-law, Mishum Ejasish, and because of somebody's wife. Ben B'Chayav Bono, Ben Lachem Bisis Beno, and Kalos applies both during his son's lifetime and after his son's death. And whether he betrothed her or married her. You are. Not skila. You're chayav chenek. You get, strangled. It is chayav misa. Yep. Okay? How do you know that someone has relations with a mother? Where's the warning not to do it? Because we need for everything. Actually, we're going to need 3 psukim for everything. We're going to need a warning. We're going to need a liability of kares. We're going to need a liability for skila, or whatever death penalty is involved. Which is interesting, because in the Bavli, I don't think we ever actually look for the source for kares. We just assume that if it's a death penalty, and you don't get the death penalty, you go down to kares. I don't remember that we had that. Could be. The nakedness of your mother should not reveal. That's the warning. Kares minayin. How do know you get kares? Ki kol asher yaseh mikol hatoy. But say anybody does from any of these revolting things, they will be eradicated mikar from its donation. As hor labal ishisish of minayin. I thought we were going to look for Onish, I guess. Now, the next one we look on Onish. Why don't we look for Onish over here? I don't know. No, I guess they're both going to come together, that's why. Where's a warning on your father's wife? It says the nakedness of your father's wife is not revealed. Kares minayin. Where do we see that there's kares involved? Because Onesh minayin. How do we know the punishment? Now, I don't know why we didn't look for a punishment for a mother. I guess because it's included in this. I'm not sure right now. But Onesh minayin, how do we know the punishment, the penalty of a death sentence? Minayin isha sheshkav saviv, of a person who reveals his father, his stepmother's nakedness. Ever saviv gilah, he revealed his father's nakedness. Most they will be put to death, begomer, etc. How do you know warning not to have relations with your daughter-in-law? Ervas kalos cholos kalei. Do not reveal the necklace of your daughter-in-law. Kares minayin, and we know that there is an excision, right? With the hands of God. You call it isha sheyaz, call it v'nichusu. Because it's a generic statement. Anybody who does any of these repugnant things will undergo kares. Onesh minayin. Where's the punishment? The isha sheishkav kaloso. In other words, where does it say the death penalty? It says anybody who lay with his daughter-in-law, tapalam darav, he is put to death. Tanisa achat nisa b'krisus. Now this Mishnah is mentioned here. It's mentioned in krisus. Nicha bekrisus. In krisus, I understand it's mentioned. Shu maybe korban uchoser and maybe korban, because there it's say about also shogeg, also unintentional. And that if you transgress, if you have two prohibitions involved, you bring two korbanos. One because she's your mother, and the other because she's your father's wife. But islach meir sanhedrin shuniska v'choser v'niska. Here it's sanhedrin. Why is it mentioned you transgress two prohibitions when you have relations with your mother, who's also your father's wife? Do you get stoned twice? They throw more stones at you. Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Messiah, Rabbi Yehuda, Father Rabbi Messiah said, it's coming. You know, it teaches us that they can warn him when they give him actual warning on the spot. They can warn him on the basis of either crime. If they give him Asura because of the father's wife, he gets Malchus. Now Malchus here is Lav Dafka. What it means is actually death, right? Mishum aim. If they give him Asura because of mother, he's also Loike. Okay? Says the Rabbi Yasubo Mishum Eshes. So why did mention also Eshes? She's also the father's wife, right? Besides being your mother and your father's wife, she's also a wife. So why did I mention that? Says more Rabbi Abiti Potter. At that point in our Mishnah is talking about where she's single. In other words, she's no longer married to your father's deceased. Okay? So you have either or, not the third option. Talmud Tninan. Now, Bavel they learn. Now, this Tninan is not a regular Tninan. Normally, Tninan means a brisa. Here it's not a brisa. It's the way in Bavel they propose to learn the Masechta. Okay, that's not the Masechta. The Sefer to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im loisa imo ru'il aviv. If his mother was not suitable to marry his father, say his father was a Kohen and she was a Grusha, or his father was Yisrael and she was a Mamzeres, right? So that make him a Mamzer, a Cholo, but that's not relevant to our discussion. Since they were their marriage was not a suitable marriage, so therefore the marriage is now. I truth is that Pnei Moshe says it's only about a case where we hold that the marriage does not take effect. I'm not sure if he's correct about that. I think it might be any time where the marriage is prohibited, even if it does take effect. So he says, he's only liable to what? He's only one liable if he has relations with his mother for one prohibition, because it's not Eishasav. Why it's not Eishasav? Because the marriage was not a suitable marriage. It should not been contracted, right? But if her father, according to the Bnei Arab Bavel, who learned this way, if the mother was suitable for the father, meaning their marriage was a legitimate marriage, so then Chayiv Shtayim is liable twice. He's liable because of one, having relations with his mother, and two, having relations with his father's wife. And in that case, Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda would concur. So the issue in which they did not concur is a machla where the marriage was not a proper one, such as a Kohen to a Grusha. There, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's only one prohibition. According to Rabban, there still are two prohibitions. Okay? That's Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabban. That's the Babylonians, the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan said no. He said Lo Shanya. And then Rabbi Yochanan said, which of course in Eretz Yisrael, Lo Shani ben Choisa imo rui aviv ben she'ein imo rui aviv. It makes no difference whether his mother was suitable for his father, whether his mother was not suitable for his father, whether the marriage was proper or not. Eino chayav el achaz, he's only liable for one prohibition. Only one prohibition, which is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, mother, not father's wife. Okay, so it's machlokas Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabban and hold, you transgress two every time you have incest with your mother. It's mother and father's wife. Rabban and hold, Rabbi Yehuda said no, only one. It's only mother. And we're going to learn this out. We're going to discuss this in some detail. Time Rabbi Yochanan, the large Rabbi Yochanan is imchahi. This large Rabbi Yochanan in Rabbi Yehuda, right? She's your mother. Stress on the word he. Mishum imata machayvo. Because of mother, you make him liable. This occasions the whole parasha, meaning that it limits the parasha le'ain, that it's only you're only liable on the mother prohibition, not on the father's wife prohibition. Rabbi Boon Barachia Boykon Rabbi Zila. Rabbi Boon Barachia asked him for Rabbi Zila. Rabbi Yochanan is supposed to say why did Rabbi Yochanan select the prohibition which pertains to the mother and reject the potential prohibition which pertains to the father's wife, after all, you have a choice of two, right? So it's a little bit difficult. What Gemara is asking, because it says in Chahi, he just told us why he holds that the prohibition, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds is only one, that the prohibition is prohibition of mother, because it says imcha he meaning a limitation, only this and not Eishesov. So I think it's the Korban Eda says pshat. The other Mepharshim, I don't like what they say, but the Korban Eda says a nice pshat. He says in the pasuk itself. The pasuk itself is in Vayikra Perek Ches pasuk itself. It says Ervas avicha ve'ervas imecha lo segale imcha hi lo segale ervasa. Your nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother you should not reveal. She is your mother. Do not reveal her nakedness. So what basically asks is, what are we able to do with that which says Ervas Avich on that pasuk? It's true the pasuk ends off Ervas Imchayi, Ervas Imechayi, whatever it is. But Lamaisa, the pasuk begins with Ervas Avicha. You can't just ignore that. What does it do with the fact that it says Ervas Avicha, the beginning of the pasuk? The nakedness of your father. It seems that the pasuk itself is throwing in. It wants us to throw in the prohibition of Eishesov, of your father's wife, besides the prohibition of your mother. What does he do with that? So says the Gemara Amar, so he says, fascinating thing, do Sarva Rabbi Shmuel. He explains his points of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel Darshans, Ervas Avicha, when it says in the pasuk Ervas Avicha, the nakedness of your father, Bizachar HaKosim Dachar, it's only about homosexual relations with your father. And it said, and Rabbi Shmuel says a fascinating thing. I understand, isn't your father on any other male? So homosexual relations are prohibited in the entire Torah, right? So he says, you get two. If you have homosexual relations with your father, you get two. I heard, as Rav Noach Weinberg says in one of his tapes, he says, Torah is sending you a message. It's saying there's gradations of sin. It says, okay, you're homosexual, but at least not with your father, right? Oh, it's at least, so even within sinning, there are levels of the heinousness of the crime. You don't like that?
Wonder what the gain, less gain should say about it.
Yeah, I think maybe on this issue they're makfi. So that's insane. So and any other homosexual relations, it's one. On your father, it's two. Okay, so that's how he learns Ervas Avicha. So he disposes of Ervas Avicha by saying it's going on homosexuality. So it says the Gemara, the Tani, as we learned in the Brisa, Haba love, if somebody has relations, father chayv love, mishum chayv love shtayim. Slap twice. So there's more. Wait a minute. If that's the case, v'nisnei shloshim v'sheva krisis patera. Why don't imagine Sechta Krisis says that 36 krisis in the Torah? Mention another one: homosexual relations with your father. So I say it mentions their homosexuality, but it doesn't mention homosexuality with your father. Says the Gemara, don't be a nudnik. Says the Gemara, in terms of the Mishnah and Krisus, homosexuality was considered to be one chorus. Because you're going to get the chorus for the act no matter what, right? It really has no practical ramification. I guess if you maybe B'shogeg, there is talk of separate korban for Ervas Avicha. But there's, in terms of chorus, there certainly is no practical ramification. You're going to get the chorus because of the homosexual relations, and you don't get two creases. So therefore, the Gemara there didn't bother mentioning. I saw that I didn't have a chance, and I looked at the Yerushalmi. He has something to say about this, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. Okay, Ervas Eishes Avicha. I feel guilty because just before shiur, like 5 minutes before I came, I looked at the Yerushalmi. Look, see what the Yerushalmi speaks about. He speaks about a few things on these pages. But I don't have it here. Okay. Says the Gemara weiter. He has a lot of stuff here. Oh well. Says the Gemara weiter. Ervas Eishes Avicha, Be'eshes of Akosim Medaber. It says, Ervas Eishes Avicha, Lo Skalei. Now, this is actually the next pasuk there. It says, after it says, the pasuk just we're talking about, it says the next pasuk, which says, Ervas Eishes Avicha, do it, the nakedness of your father's wife, Be'eshes of Akosim Medaber. That's obviously about your father's wife, who's your stepmother. Ervas Imecha, which is the previous pasuk, Zu imo she'eshes aviv. That's your mother, who is your father's wife. Imo she'enu eshes aviv minayin. How do we know your mother, who's not your father's wife? Because you could be born out of wedlock. How do you know you live on her? Im chahi los kaler v'sa. This is it says Im chahi los kaler v'sa. That's of course according to Rabbi Yishmael. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel that imchoi los kalei v'sa. The he is not a limitation like Rabbi Yehuda learns. Rabbi Yehuda learns imchoi means if you only liable because of one, not because of mother and father's wife, but rather only mother. But Rabbi Shmuel himself learns imchoi los kalei v'sa teaches us that you're liable for your mother who's not your father's wife. Okay? For Rabbi Yehuda, we don't know where that comes from, at least not yet. But according to Rabbi Shmuel, your mother's not your father's wife, it's now the next four lines we're going to, to the bottom of the page, we're going to leave out now. We'll put them in later on, because they're kind of either out of place or extraneous. Says the one on our base, here it says Rabbi Akiva, but after a great deal of anguish here, I decided it has to say Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, now I'm going to tell you my pshat more. I don't like anybody else's pshat here. So Rabbi Shmuel, and in all fairness to me, you see that the Pnei Moshe takes out the word Eshes, which is here in parentheses. You see that? So I leave it in. Okay, so therefore I don't completely. I gain something here, and I think I'm correct, of course. Rabbi Shmuel Darash. Rabbi Shmuel Dashan like this. Ervas Eshes Avicha says it says in the next pasuk. Remember the two psukim here. One talks about Ervas Avicha Los Kalei. Maybe I should read to you inside. Now I'm going to give you this chumash. Is there a chumash on the table there? Right, you too, you look inside it. Okay, you took it 7 and 8 here. Because, Ryan, should we go up here? Okay, I got it. Okay, so if you look at Pasuk Zayin, right, verse 7, for those of the Hertz Chumash and the Hirsch Chumash there, so the chapter 18, verse 7. So the first Pasuk is Ervas Avicha Ervas Imecha Los Kalei, right? Imchahi Los Kalei Ervasa, right? And that's the Pasuk Zayin. There's Pasuk Ches, which is Ervas Eshes Avicha Los Kalei. How's the rest of the Pasuk go? Ervas Avicha. Okay? So you see those two psukim, so we're working with those two psukim. Okay? Okay, you see the English there, right? So I don't have to translate for you. So So now let's see the more inside. Rabbi Shmuel, again, I changed Rabbi Akiva to Rabbi Shmuel. Top line and Lamed down base. Rabbi Shmuel, Dorash, Ervas Eishes Avicha, that's Pasuk Ches, verse 8, right? Ervas Eishes Avicha, Be'eshes Avakosa Medaber. That's talking about your father's wife, who's not your mother. Ervas Imcha, the Pasuk before, right? Because that's in Pasuk Zion, Ervas Imcha, Zu imo sheyesh avi. That's your mother, who's not your father's. Who is your father's wife, right? Imo she'eno eshes of minayin. How to know your mother, who's not your father's wife? Imcha'ilos kalei avasa. Right? It's just your mother. You should reveal her nakedness. Very, very simple. All three elements, right? Ma avale. What does Rabbi Akiva do? Now, what does it mean? What does Rabbi Akiva do? Rabbi Akiva learn. The problem is like this. What does Rabbi Akiva do with the pasuk with pasuk Ches? Pasuk Ches says Eishes Avicha Lo Skalei, right? But he learns that Ervas Avicha on pasuk Zion is going on Eishes Av. Remember, Rabbi Shmuel is the one who came up with the novel idea that Ervas Avicha and Pasuk Zion is going on homosexual relations with your father. But Rabbi Akiva says that is going on your father's wife, right? Ervas Avicha, your father's wife. So why does he need Pasuk Ches? Pasuk Ches is redundant according to Rabbi Akiva. You see that? Without a chumash, I don't know how I could have showed it to you. But Pasuk Ches is redundant according to Rabbi Akiva, right? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, Pasuk Lachar Misa. So he learns that out from that you're chayav on Eishes Av even after your father dies. Now I want you to know all the Mefarshim except for me, except for the Vitei Sheish, they all say, which makes no sense to me, they learn that Pasuk Lachar Misa Av is going on the way they learn the Gemara, taking out different stuff, is going on your mother. That it's mechadesh, that even your mother is also to you after your father's death. Your real mother. Which makes no sense to me. You need a pasuk to tell you that's pasuk. But the way I'm learning, so it's going, pasuk Ches is talking about your father's wife who's not your mother. And it's saying that remains also to you even after your father's death. Okay? So that's the way it's pasuk to me. That's what Rabbi Akiva is saying. Okay? Now, V'leisle, again, we change the names. V'leisle Rabbi Shmuel came. So what does Rabbi Shmuel? Does he hold not hold that your father's wife is also you after your father's death? Doesn't he hold that way as well? Where is he going to learn that out from? How is he going to know that? Because he doesn't have anything extra. Ervas Avicha uses for homosexual relations, and Pasuk Ches teaches us stam the issur of your father's wife. How do you know father's wife is also for you for even after his death? Says the Gemara. Now here we put in the last two lines on Lam Dal. We take them from there and put them over here, and because it's really, you see, look back there. Place the Rabbi Shmuel came. This is really these lines. So doesn't Rabbi Shmuel hold that way? And here Taka says Shmuel, right? Says here, Ervas Avicha he. He learns out from the Ervas there, from the end of that pasuk. The end of that pasuk, at the end of pasuk Ches, Ervas Avicha. It's the second Ervas Avicha. Lo shani ben b'chaya ben lachamisa, makes no death, but whether it should be b'chayov, right? Whether it's during his lifetime or after his death, that she's prohibited. Okay, so he learns it out from the Ervas Avicha, which is at the end of pasuk Ches. Okay, period. Now comes a new passage. Okay, it's a continuation, but not directly. Okay, the Trident puts in the word ksiv here. You don't really need it, but it's a luxury. But let's use it. Ksiv ervas avicha. It says ervas avicha, ervas imecha. Okay, there's a linkage made a juxtaposition between ervas avicha and ervas imecha. That's in pasuk Zion, right? And here the Trident throws in, which I think is nice. Uksiva, it says, Ervas Aviv Gilo. Look in Vayikra 20:11. Chapter 20, verse 11. Okay? which is in parsha, next parsha. So there, it's talking about the penalty. Okay, it's talking about what the actual Misa's basis. And it says there, Ervas Aviv Giloy. Somebody want to read me the pasuk, the whole pasuk? It's Aviv, yeah. Okay, so there it's about the actual death penalty, okay? In chapter 18, it's talking about the prohibition. Here in chapter 20, it's talking about the punishment, okay? So it says, so it's a Yerushalmi, it's a linkage. Ma avicha, koshu avicha. And the Gemara says, so the linkage is like this. Your father means anytime, as long as he is your father, meaning that doesn't matter whether he's your married to your mother or not. Bein lonish, bein la azhara. It makes no difference in terms of penalty or in terms of warning. Af imecha, koshi imecha. So to your mother, anytime she's a mother, whether she's married to your father or not, bein lonish, bein la azhara, whether there is a penalty, whether dealing with the penalty or with the warning. So who touches this person? This drasha, this brisa, which seems to makes a linkage between, which makes this linkage between Vayikra Yeches and Vayikra Chof. Who's making this linkage? Who has to make this? Which Tana is the author of this linkage? Lo mistabel Dori Shahin Kra. It makes no sense to say that this pasuk is darshan. Ella, the only person who needs to make this is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, the author of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda holds that that there aren't two, that any time she's your mother and she's Eishasav, you only transgress one prohibition, right? Only your mother. He learns that from Imchahi. Well, if he learns that from Imchahi, then he no longer has a source for learning your mother was not married to your father. Because that's how, if you take a look at the where is it on top? The third line from the top. Imo she'eno eishes aviv minayin, his mother who's not his father's wife, how do we know that she's prohibited? Imahi los galer v'asa, imchahi los galer v'asa. It's your mother no matter what, right? So therefore don't reveal her nakedness. So that's fine. That's Rabbi Shmuel. He uses Imchai to teach us even your mother, who wasn't married to your father, is also to you. But how does Rabbi Yehuda know that? Rabbi Yehuda uses that Imchai, Rabbi Yochanan told us number Aleph, to learn out that when you have a choice of giving the two possible prohibitions of Eishes of and Imo, of father's wife and mother, you only give one. There's only one carbon. There's only one possible warning, not two. So according to, which is mother, not father's wife. So how does he, if he uses Imchai for that purpose, that's locked up for him. He can't use it. So where is he going to find the prohibition on your mother who's not your father's wife? So that he learns out from the Gzeir Shava. He says, your father, no matter who's your father, right? No, wedlock is not an issue by father. I don't know exactly why, but wedlock is not an issue by a father, right? So therefore, and there's a linkage drawn between father and mother. So therefore, just like by her father, it makes a difference what kind of father he is, whether in wedlock or out of wedlock. So to out of marriage, it makes no difference, okay? I guess, but by mother, so to by mother makes no difference. I guess maybe because it's an extra vichohu by father. There's the vichohu which is in Vayikra Yud Ches, and the extra vichohu which is in by Vayikra Chof. So therefore, he says no matter whether he's your father in wedlock or not, and we extrapolate that to mother. Anyway, however the drasha works, it's only Rabbi Yehuda needs the drasha, since he doesn't have Imchai free and available to teach us that it's that your mother had wedlock, so he has to learn from a Gzeir Shava. Okay, and that's how he learns. Tzar Midrash, he has to darshan Erva Savicha ve'Erva Simecha. The nakedness of your father, nakedness of your mother. Ma bicha koshu avicha, just like your father knew ever, no matter how is your father. Bein l'onish, bein l'asor, whether in terms of penalty or in terms of warning. Af imecha, so to your mother, koshi imecha, in way she's your mother. Bein l'onish, bein l'asor, whether in terms of the penalty or in terms of the warning. Omar Rabbi Zira said, Hadar Marah, this teaches us, even if there's only one side open. Remember, there's a shas machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel is in need of Zer Shav and Mufne. It's to have a bridge of two open words on either side. Akiva holds it doesn't have to be Mufne. We actually mentioned it last night, 2 nights ago. It doesn't. You don't have to be Mufne. It doesn't have to be have extra words. Now, and this is obviously one of their many machleksim in terms of how to learn throughout Shas consistently. So here, there's only one extra avichohu. The avichohu in Vayikra Chav is extraneous. You take a look at that passage, you still open in Vayikra Chav, Vayikra 20:11. So it says, Ervas Eishes Avichol. What do you mean, passage again? Who? Ervas Avigila. Okay, Ervas Avigila, that's extraneous. Because you want to tell, you don't have to tell us that it's Ervas Aviv. Just tell us, we put it to death. Right? Those 3 words, Ervas Aviv Gila, reveal the nakedness of his father, that's superfluous. So therefore, it's Mufne Mitzad Echad. That's the one side of the Gzer Shava, which is extra words. In Vayikra Yud Ches, there are no extra words, because every word there we gobbled up and darshaned already. None of those words are extraneous in Vayikra Yud Ches. This is a Gzer Shava, which is Mufne Mitzad Echad, as only has extra words on one side. Am Rav Zira Domara, this teaches us Lamei Gzer Shava Afilu Mufne Mitzad Echad, even if it's only open on one side. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda, he said, Lay stop Shita al Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva is that simple Pasuk on Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva Amar Gzer Shava Afilu Yisheinu Mufne. Rabbi Akiva says you don't even make Gzer Shava even if it's not Mufne at all. Right? This is a Chiddush. It's like Rabbi Akiva says you don't need any extra words. No extraneous materials necessary to make Gzer Shava. This right, so he makes Gzer Shava on the basis of one side of extraneous material is so even more machmir and the Gzer Shava than Rabbi Akiva. Okay, that's really basically a point of information, a peripheral point. It's not directly related to the rest of the Gemara's conversation. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, Habal Imo. Somebody is liable to come in relations with his mother. Is he liable on Eishes Ish? Now, this is according to the Gillian Ephraim. This is going back to Rabbi Yehuda's issue. Rabbi Yehuda says you only mechayev one, right? If she's your mother and your father's wife, you only mechayev because of mother. What about she's your mother and she's an Eishes Ish? And of course, the nafkamina is for, if they gave you asra for Eishes Ish, can we kill you via strangulation? Even though, had they given asra via mother, we would have given you skila. Or do we say, no, on a technicality you get off altogether? Because the only hasra you can give the guy, the only warning you give according to Rabbi Yehuda is only skila and nothing else. What's the halacha? Okay? So it says the Gemara, Rabbi I mean, it's not, that's hockey, it's more interesting than incest. Okay. So again, Habon Imo Maushu Chayavale Mishumesh, does Eishes still play a role according to Yehuda or not? Of course it does. Because according to Rabbanan, there's no preclusions. Even Chayi teaches us your mother out of wedlock. It doesn't teach us anything to limit you dafka to the prohibition of mother. But what about according to Rabbi Yehuda? Says come and see. Ilu ba. Was that Taka what it was about?
It was overtime.
Okay.
Because it was overtime. I told you it was.
I wasn't Makavo. Okay. Says Tachamei Ilu ba acher olea chay mishum Eishes Ish. if somebody somebody else had relations with her, who's not her son. Obviously, Eishes Ish is a factor, right? Benolo Koshke, not Kap Chomer, son should be liable in Eishes Ish. Now, the truth is, I don't want to really get into it. The Gillian Ephraim does. This has to do with Isur Koilel, Isur Moisef, all those kinds of things, because Eishes Ish is less severe than mother. But mother comes first, right? Because it doesn't really come first, but it's more innate. I don't know how to put it. In other words, she was an Eishes Ish. Eishes Ish comes first. She was your Eishes. She was your father's wife before she was your mother, although nowadays not necessarily. But inherently, she's your mother. Eishes Ish is only coincidental. So there are all sorts of issues here which surround Yisur Koil, Yisur Moisef. We're not going to get into them because the Gemara doesn't reveal them overtly here, but they are here.
Before the punishment is less severe.
Right, and that's right. So, but here we're saying fakir. We're saying Eishes Ish is more extensive, right? It's Isur Mosif. It adds people, right? Because
more of Eishes Ish possibilities.
Right, there's mother because she's only mother of however in bed, right? So that's what more it's saying. So Eisur Rabbi Yossi asks, Hare Chorga. I don't understand. What about her stepson? Hare Hu Chayev Aleh. He's liable upon her for Eishes, obviously a typo. Gillian Ephraim changes it. Eishes of. She's liable for a stepson is liable on this woman for Eishes of, for father's wife. Ubna eno chayav aleh mishum Eishes of. Her son is not liable upon her because of Eishes of, right? So we see that prohibitions might be tailor-made. Who says? You're saying Eishes Ish should definitely take precedence. Not necessarily for the son it's aim, for the stepson it's Eishes of. Maybe they're tailor-made prohibitions. So Lamaisa, the Gemara comes to the conclusion. The Shara Yisrael takes out the Dalet here. Tani, we learn. Af by Rishar Rayas came. Rabbi Yehuda Taka holds by other Rayas as well. Chamoso ve'Eishes Ish. Your mother-in-law who's a married woman. Atayfso mishum chamoisoi. Your Taka only have one prohibition. He extrapolates. Imchoi is not just aloha by mothers, but it's a binyan af. From there we derive, anytime you have two prohibitions, one imo, or chamoso, or kaloso, and the other Eishes Ish, or is anything of that sort, you only take the one and not the other. Okay? Abishai Rayas Keda Chamoso Veishes Ish Atovsa Mishum Chamoso. Only mother-in-law. Kaloso Veishes Ish, daughter-in-law and Eishes Ish Atovsa Mishum Kaloso. Only daughter-in-law. Achoso Veishes Ish. Now, actually, there's a question. Achoso Veishes Ish. What about your sister and Eishes Ish? Do you say the same thing? Atovso Mishum. There it says, well, actually, the way the Shara Yisrael, I'm going to read like Shara Yisrael has a Tikkun Gisha. I don't actually believe it's right, but it's cute. And that has value too, right? So the way he learns it here is, Achoso Eishes Ish, Atovso Mishum Eishes Ish. He throws in the word Eishes Ish. V'tavis Mishum Achoso, but why doesn't he give him sister? So says the Gemara, Mavricho min achamuro mekantro bekala leis yochil. To take away more severe sir and prosecute him for the less severe sir, that you can't do. So most of the Farshim learn that Mavricho min achamuro bekantro bekala is read in the inflection of a question, not inflection of a response. But the way the Shara Yisrael learns it, it's again, I'm not sure it's true, but it is cute and does fit in nicely. He says, again, he threw in that you make him mechayim because of Eishes Ish, not because of sister. Even though it says here, Tovsa Mishum Achoso, sounds like it's because she's your sister. He says, no, it's Mishum Eishes Ish. And the Gemara is asking, V'tov is Mishum Achoso, why don't we give him the sister prohibition? Which would be now. Let's talk about that outside. And it's really very good the way he learns. All the other ones we learned, mother-in-law, Eishes Ish, you give mother-in-law. Daughter-in-law, Eishes Ish, you give mother-in-law. Mother, Eishes Ish, you give mother, right? All of a sudden we come to sister and Eishes Ish, you give Eishes Ish.
So why is this not consistent? Why do you give sister? This is a more very simple answer. On your sister, I didn't really realize this. On your sister, there's no death penalty. It's kares, but there's no death penalty. Basin doesn't put you to death. So therefore, if I said you're liable on sister and not on Eshes Ish, I get you off the hook of capital punishment. Oh no, that we're not going to do. On all the other ones, we're not letting you off the hook. On the contrary, we'll give you a more severe death penalty. Eshes Ish is only strangulation. We're going to give you skila. Here, if I give you sister prohibition and not Eshes Ish, you're going to get off the hook altogether. We're not even going to be able to strangle you. It's no good. Everybody wants to watch on closed circuit TV. So therefore, that's why we come to the conclusion that the Tani, and that's as we learned, also somebody who has relations with his wife's sister. With his sister. His sister is liable on because of sister, and because of your stepmother's daughter. Your stepmother's a bas eshes aviv. Okay? Now, it's really your sister. Now, the thing is like this. It took me a few minutes of staring at, this whole Gemara is difficult to prepare, but it took me a few minutes staring at this to chop this. In the halacha is, of course, in the Brady Bunch, that any of the boy can marry any of the girls. Right? You knew that, right? When you watched the Brady Bunch, you didn't know that?
That's an assumption. False assumption.
Okay. Do you know what the Brady Bunch is?
I know the Brady Bunch is. I've seen it a couple times.
Okay.
I don't know all the rules.
Okay, the rules of Brady Bunch are all the boys are his kids and all the girls are her kids.
Right.
Okay. So they can marry each other. Any of the boys can marry any of the girls, right? Your step. So, but here it sounds not like the way, because here it says you're liable on your own sister, and this is your blood sister, because of sister, and because of your father's wife's daughter. So that sounds like your stepsister is also on you. It is not your father's or father's or real mother's daughter.
So the truth is, the Torah actually is a funny pasuk. I forgot where to look at the pasuk inside. But the Pnei Moshe brings down the pasuk. The pasuk says, it must be there. It's in Vayikra Yud Ches. It says, the way the pasuk reads, it says, Ervas achoscho lo skalei. It says, Ervas bas eshes avicha. Moledes avicha achos chayi lo skaler v'asad. That's what it says. The Pnei Moshe brings down 2 lines before the lines get Yud Ches Yud Av. Right. So it says there, the erva of the bas eshes avicha, right? The erva of the daughter of your father's wife. But that. So you would think any stepdaughter is also, right? Stepsister. But it's not the case. It's not true. It's because this is specifically in the context of a biological sister as well. So what the Torah actually did is an amazing thing. The Torah created a unique stepsister Isser to put on top of the sister Isser, which only applies to real sister. That's the way the pasuk is structured. It's a very weird pasuk. You see that? You read the English. You see that too, right?
This is the daughter of your father's wife, born to your father. She is your sister. She shall not.
Right. Which means it must be your actual biological sister, but we slap on that a gemachte isser, right? A made-up prohibition of stepsister, which doesn't apply to a Brady Bunch stepsister. Okay, so that's the Gemara saying here. Amazing thing. Tani Babachos, the son who's like translation of his sister. Chayv lemshuachos, the like of his sister. Umshubasation aviv hanaya isser. Only unique in this issue, because of bas eshes aviv. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Omer. No. Let's give you a reasonable. Habol achayso eno chayv oleh mishum There's only one name, right? It might be a kind of convoluted pasuk, but it's only achos, so there is no second prohibition. Okay, which makes sense because there is no stepsister prohibition. Okay, now the words "chen barak" will also cause the poskim, the mepharshim, much grief. The Shaita so just takes them out, and he proves that it's not really relevant here. So we will take it out as well. Okay, really came from on top. Rabbi Yirmiyah Ravo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yirmiyah Ravo said named Rabbi Yochanan said, I said Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Aviv. Rabbi Yossi said there's only one prohibition, only sister, not stepsister. It's like his father, right? His father, Rabbi Yehuda said, when we have a choice of Eshesav and aim, we only give one prohibition, right? Only mother, right? Not Eshesav. So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the son, held the same way. And he said, here we have two possible prohibitions, stepsister and sister. We only give sister. That's just like his father, right? Sounds good, right? So it's Command Rabbi Yehuda Taifa Shem Rishon. Just Rabbi Yehuda takes the status which he has, which is mother over Eshesav and over Eshezish. Can Rabbi Yehuda Taifa Shem Rishon, he takes the first status, which is sister over stepsister. Then Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan reneged on this. They said, no. No, it's not necessarily so. There is Idab is following his father, the Shita Rabbi Yehuda's father. Tamat imo below Eshes Aviv, Chai Mishum Eshes Aviv. Tamat imo below Eshes Aviv, Chayav. I read it wrong. Taman imo below Eshes Aviv Chayav. Their mother, even if it's not your father's wife, is a prohibition. And Eshes Aviv, your father's wife, below imo without mother is Chayav. In other words, there you could agree with Rabbanan that there are two prohibitions by your father's wife, who's also your mother. He doesn't have to hold like his father Rabbi Yehuda, that we choose only one prohibition, which is mother. He could go with either or both. But here it's different. But here, the reason why it says there's only one is because of what we were talking about before, because of the Brady Bunch halacha. Matzina, it's the Brady law, there's the Brady Bunch halacha. Here we find that any other stepsister, other than your biological sister, you're muttering. So what do you say here? You thought that his point was like Rabbi Yehuda the father. Like his father, Rabbi Yehuda, right? It's Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. So you thought he was saying Rabbi Yehuda's father. The Rabbi, you have two potentially surim, you only give one. And that's why it says you lie only for sister, not for stepsister. No, his point is, to use the fancy term, an exegetical one. He says, don't learn the Chumash that way. You learn the Chumash that the Chumash made up a new prohibition in order to have two prohibitions, one completely artificial by sister. No, they didn't make up this artificial prohibition, which doesn't apply to a true stepsister. So therefore, wherever you expound upon the pasuk in order to explain it, there's only one prohibition. The only prohibition is sister. There isn't so separate stepsister as well. That's just an optical illusion in the Torah itself. Okay? Says the Mishnah further. Habola Zachar Balabhema. Some translations with a males, homosexual, Avema, bestiality. Felicia Mavias Abehema. And a person and a woman who brings an animal upon her, they're all liable to skila. They're all stoned. Says Zomar, a very famous statement in Mishnah. If the person sinned, my behema, my chotas, halachos, we put the animal to death as well. Why? What did the animal sin? Because a certain person stumbled and on the basis of this animal. In other words, after they stone Yankel, if Yankel's dog's still walking on the street, they're going to say, that's Yankel's dog's spot. We put Yankel to death because he had relations with his dog's spot. So it doesn't pass, right? Oh no, that's the next case, sorry. First one is that Shastam, he was a stumbling block. The next was Another interpretation. This is the one. That the animal shouldn't walk by Malvis Yomro, and they say Zosh Niskalish Pani al Yodelo Yodea, that this is the animal which caused Yankel to be stoned. Okay. How do we know a warning not to have relations with a male? Okay, so it says, it says, don't lie with a male in the female way. Chorus, I know you get chorus for this. It says, anybody does from these repugnant things, so they should be excised. I know that there's a capital punishment in Basin. They did a repugnant thing. Shneim, both of them, Mosi Mosu, they shall die. The man bum, their blood is upon them. At Yod, the man bum, and we learned the man bum from the man bum, meaning there's a Yerushalmi of the man bum. It says elsewhere by stoning, and here too it's talking about stoning. Okay, that's how we know that it's stoning. That applies to the male in the homosexual relationship. Lenishkav, the person who acts as the female in the homosexual relationship, how do we know that he's liable to be stoned as well? Because it says, Vezachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha. Now, it could have just said, Vezachar lo tishkav, right? It could have said, Vezachar lo mishkavei isha, or something like that. So, there's an extra language, right? It's tishkav, mishkavei, one of them is superfluous. So, therefore, we darshan it. Karibei lo tishachev. It means that the person should not be lain, L-A-I-N, right? Even the person who acts as a female, the passive one, is liable as well. That works out Rabbi Akiva because he darshans extra lashonis, right? He doesn't say Dibra Akosa V'Lashan B'nei Adam, right? But according to Rabbi Shmuel, who holds all over Shas, the Torah speaks like human beings, so superfluous words are not available to darshan. How does he know Kores? How does he know Kores for the person who's the female in the homosexual relationship? Says Mar Lo Yeh Kadesh B'Bnei Yisrael. He learns out the warning from Lo Yeh Kodes Kadesh B'Nei Yisrael. That's the warning. Shouldn't have a Kadesh. A Kadesh is a male prostitute. What's a male prostitute? The person who acts as a female in the homosexual relations. Okay? So I'm not sure that's what a male prostitute is nowadays, but fair face, right? So, but that's what the Gemara is prohibiting in Kadesh. Okay, Kares l'nishkav Rabbi Shmuel minayin. How do we know that there's kares? That's the warning. How do we know that there's also kares for the person who's passive? Rabbi Shmuel minayin. Rabbi Yerushalmi Sanhedrin said Nemar Mar Ba Kan Kadesh. Here it says Kadesh. The Nehemiah says we're going to join a Baska Malachim, which of course is always difficult, but we're just going to finesse that point. Yerushalmi does that occasionally, as we've seen. There was a Kadesh in the world. Atlame Kadesh mi Kadesh. The same Kadesh of Toeva. I guess it says I didn't actually go to the Baska, to be honest with you, but this time my God was getting tired of these drushes. But I guess it says in Malachim there Toeva. Somewhere in connection with Kadesh it says Toeva. And we know Toeva always means Kares, because it says in Vayikra at the end of Perek Yuches, the Nichsu Kan Fosher says it's called Toeva Seila, whatever the Chad Mikasher Yasim called Toeva Seila V'Nichrusu. I assume it's the end of Perek Yuches, that pasuk. That's not material, but it's yeah. Okay, so it's a generic statement. Anything which is called Toeva, the person gets kares. Which pasuk is that? Choftes. Okay, so yeah. Okay. Says Mara, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shem, Rabbi China said, Toeva mi Toeva. There's another Yerushalmi, and again, if we had the inclination to get into it, it's enough to learn out Kaddish from Kaddish and that. Toeva, but there's some way to learn Toeva from Toeva directly. There's a price to this effect. Toeva Sushnehem. They both did it to Toeva. Actually, the way he started out, Toeva Sushnehem, is that without going into the pasuk in Malachim, without going to Kaddish, we could short circuit the process.
It says about both the active and passive persons in the homosexual relationship, to'eva asu shnehem. So once they're both linked together, so they're both linked together across the board. Shnehem b'skila, shnehem b'azara, shnehem b'ikares. They're linked together for all matters, for the warning, for the kares, and for the skila. Okay? So linkage, even though it's not explicit, the warning by both. Unless you learn like Rabbi Akiva to darshan, Tishachei Mishkavei. But even though it's not explicit, the linkage is enough to put them all into all three categories: the warning, the kares, the death penalty. Okay? How do we know the warning? Not to have relations with an animal. It says in any animal, you should not place your lying to become defiled. Kares minayin. How we know kares? Say pasuk chavtesken. Onish minayin. How do we know the death penalty? Most you must. It should be put to death. At Yolib, how do we know it's skila? At Yolib the main bum is main bum. Says Yerushalmi the main bum that teaches stoning. Ad kidun k'Rabbi Akiva. Now, according to this is a little bit difficult. What does it mean? How do Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel get into this discussion here? So it seems to me that it means like this. Rabbi Akiva requires a drasha in and of himself for Baal Beima. This whole drasha which you just had is a car according to Rabbi Akiva. But what about Rabbi Shmuel? Rabbi Shmuel, the way we learned before, learn out just from Kaddish. Right? Kaddish includes animals as well. Kaddish is a generic statement. Don't have any licentious behavior in Klal Yisrael. So why is Beima needed in own psukim? So it's right. Rabbi Shmuel ben Nasrei, Rabbi Akiva ben Nasrei. Rabbi Shmuel learns out from wherever he learns out. Rabbi Akiva learns out from wherever he learns out. You're right, according to Rabbi Shmuel, you don't need extra psukim. I'm not convinced that actually is the pshat in the Gemara, but I didn't see a pshat which made me happier. Kares l'nishkav al Rabbi Shmuel leis mashkach. Now, a kares, according to Rabbi Shmuel, we did not find by an animal. So, you know what? Now I'm stuck. I realized when I learned this, I learned this wrong, and it's after 10:15, so I will bow out somewhat ungracefully now, and we will pick up on this next week.